Clubhouse.
Welcome back to Escaping Gilead. This is for the 6th episode of the first season of The Testaments. This one was called Stadium. This is Paul.
This is Caroline.
All right, so this one was kind of the one I was waiting for.
Agreed.
Because of all of the Lydia flashbacks and the world building that we got, not only just for seeing the sons of Jacob do their thing, which, was awful, but Lydia also, and getting a fuller sense of her character arc, which is different than it was in the book, but still effective.
Also, I felt like it gave us so much world building overall, like not just about Lydia's character, but about how a lot of other people got to where they were. And we were always, I think one of the biggest questions when it comes to Handmaids and the Testaments is how in the world did America go from where we think we are now to Gilead, right? That's everybody's question. What did that transition look like? I think that's the meatiest part of what people really want to know. Like, we spend a lot of time in Gilead, and we sometimes in Handmaids had flashbacks to, the before times, but that transition, that is what we all want to sit in. It is the hardest part, I think, in a lot of ways, because I think it's where we see a lot of comparisons to modern life, whether it's in America or in other countries. And I think that makes it extremely difficult to watch. And it's something that I actually want to bring up like right off the top, because I feel like as a podcast, we know, because we have had contact with Bruce Miller and his group that led actually to a really great interview that we did over on the Handmaids podcast, because we were saying some things on the podcast that he actually wanted to either answer directly or give some more context to when we were questioning about whether things really could actually go this way in the modern world.
Right.
And that was an amazing thing that he reached out to do that. I feel like I owe Bruce Miller and the whole writing team a lot of, I guess I want to say apologies, because in The Handmaid's Tale, we were able to, and I'm not sure how, to rewatch and digest and come up with all these layers and complicated ideas and theories and all this stuff. In the Testaments, I don't know if it's because we're older. I don't know if it's because the world we live in. I'm not sure what it is, but we have been watching the episode once, and that's about all we can handle. And we aren't going back and doing like deeper dives and more, scrutinizing of the dialogue or pulling quotes the way that we might have in The Handmaids. Because of that, I feel like that we probably are missing some layers to this. And I think in this episode, because we are having this amazing flashback, I kind of feel like it's like the old podcast that we used to have where we could go back and talk about it more and talk about how we were feeling and talk about these characters at a deeper level. Because are you feeling this, Paul, that like we're kind of keeping things a little bit more surface? I don't know, not going quite as deep into these storylines because it's the younger girls. Maybe that makes it harder.
The subject matter is harder to want to dig into.
Is it because it's young girls, or do you think it's just because we also already did 7 or 8 years of Handmaid, so it's like now we're doing more and it's just like a compounding thing? Or why do you think? Because the stuff that I'm seeing for feedback from fans on our Facebook group,
The Handmaid's Tale Gilead online,
we have like 40,000 members on there. Come on over and join us. A lot of the comments we're seeing is people are saying, this is really, really hard for me to watch. And these are still people who watched all of Handmaids. This is getting harder for me to watch. I don't think I can continue to watch. And I'm wondering, because I think our podcast often reflects what the fans are saying as a group. I'm wondering if we can try to figure out a little bit like why. Why is this one so much harder? What is it? Is it that they're younger girls? Is it that we're getting to see someone like Agnes, who we know is Hannah, and we're sort of finding out like what's the rest of her story? What is pulling on our heartstrings so much harder this time?
I think it is the segment of the story that we're in right now. A fair prediction, it would be that we are not going to be in the period of Agnes's or any other main character's life where they're engaging in things like the ball and stuff for much longer, you know?
Yeah.
I think the story will move on. I think there may still be some, what in our society we would call kind of an inappropriate pairing, but having just a whole group of girls out for display or having to endure things like corporal punishment and that kind of stuff, I think that will lessen, but it won't go away.
And I'm even going to throw in like the abuse of the dentist. Like we watch the abuse of grown adult women in Handmaids, but these are children. And there's something about it. I think that Lydia's line of innocence can be lost in a variety of ways, that's like a paraphrase. I believe that very much. And I almost believe that as watchers, like our innocence was lost, but we were watching adult on adult crime. And now we're watching adult on children crime, even children on children crime. And that, I think, is plucking a different heartstring for me and making it a little bit more difficult.
It's always a real gauge, you know, in a show in terms of like, quote unquote, like how far are they willing to go?
Will they kill the dog? Will they kill the child?
Will they kill the baby? Like
Right.
House of the Dragon, they will kill a baby. Walking Dead, the source material for that actually had Judith die as an infant.
Ooh,
They elected to let Judith age instead on the TV show. So yeah, it's like a scale. It's like a really macabre scale
Right.
that people have to use. And to Bruce and the team's defense, things like the assault scene have been more in our minds. You know, they've shown us enough for us to construct it, but they're not
Right.
putting the actresses or even body doubles through the worst of it.
Right. And which I agree. And I think that we gave them a lot of credit in previous episodes that they handled it gracefully and they did do a lot of off-screen things. And, you know, this one had some on-screen things that were difficult to see. And we're going to dive right into it here. But I felt like we needed to give that little caveat about like, why is this podcast not diving as deep? Well, because we haven't watched it 15 times like we normally do. We've watched it once and taken notes. And we've talked with each other, but we're not able to. I think our hearts are not able to watch it over and over and over again.
Before we do that diving,
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about some listener feedback, since every time we ask for listener feedback and we say, we'll tell about it on the podcast, well, we might as well do that now.
Yeah, so we actually got a great message from Lori B. She wanted to point out in a previous episode, we had talked about the dolls in Agnes's dollhouse and how they had sort of faces, but they were mainly featureless. They had kind of like just little indents where things could be. Turns out that this is from something called the Waldorf School. Then she was referring to them as Waldorf dolls. And so I looked that up and they are real schools. They currently exist. This isn't like an old timey thing. I'm going to just read to you guys for a minute. It's a developmentally focused low tech education. The ages surprised me. It was from 7 to 14. I was surprised. That seemed a little older for what the rest of this I'm going to describe. It prioritizes creativity, imagination, emotional growth. It often delays formal academics in favor of things like hands-on, artistic, and movement-based learning. It made me think a ton of what we've been seeing in Aunt Lydia's school. The jump roping, the gardening, the embroidery, that they learn things about science and math and how things work through things like cooking and gardening. And like that's how they learn about things like life cycles and things like that. It's more about the whole child. This is what it claims, the head, the heart, and the hands, rather than just, you know, academic schooling. I didn't know these schools existed. I didn't know anything about them.
No.
It sounds a little like Montessori, and I don't know that much difference about them, but the age range struck me because it very much seems like the age range of Aunt Lydia's school. The pinks seem to be about 6 or 7 years old. Our older girls seem to be about 14 years old. So, Lori B., I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a Waldorf school seems right on.
And then on our Facebook group, we actually got some praise from Elaine Harrison, says that she loves the podcast and hearing our thoughts on not only this show, but The Handmaid's Tale itself. So that was very nice. Thank you, Elaine.
Also, we got another one that came through DMs from Aisha Martin, and she was saying that she has watched all of the episodes several times and re-listened to our podcast several times and just waits every week for that podcast to come out. So I'm so happy that you're listening and grateful that you want to tell us all about what you think is going on. So thanks so much for listening. Are you ready to dive into Aunt Lydia and the flashback of flashbacks? Because I feel like this one, I feel like a lot of people have been waiting for, finding out how did Lydia go from Lydia to Aunt Lydia?
It's a really great journey. They changed it a little bit from the book.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what it is when we get to those little changes. But they are pretty much little changes.
If you guys did not watch Handmaids, again, don't know what you're doing watching the Testaments if you haven't, but we remember June being at work and we remember people coming in, remember? And they were like, oh, the women need to like clean out their desks and all that kind of stuff. This was different. This was much, much, much more aggressive, much, much, much quicker to me. Because I can remember June sitting back at home with Luke and them being like, I can't believe what's going on. What's happening? You know, I don't know if I can get into my bank account. Remember, there was like a lot of time from when the job thing happened to more and more was falling apart. This was like, you're at work making coffee in the teacher's lounge. Next thing you know, you're sitting in a stadium with all these women. Very, very fast.
Which speaks to what you were mentioning earlier about what it must have taken for that takeover to happen. They would have needed men, and only men, really, everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
yes.
Everywhere.
Yes.
That they could get those weapons to outfit, because those weren't hunting rifles, those weren't military rifles. And then the other men making the decisions and all that kind of stuff. It's almost like a comic book kind of plot, but it's also highly plausible.
It is. And I think that's what makes this difficult, right, to go through, because we are like sitting here thinking like, I mean, I was a teacher years ago. I've been in the teacher's lounge. I've been talking about who's making the coffee. I've been there, you know, and the idea of someone coming to the door and shooting our coworker in the head, like that just boggles me. And the voiceover of Lydia, first of all, I have to tell you, the first time we're hearing her voice in the voiceover, I immediately sat up in my seat. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. We're getting Lydia voiceover. We're getting Lydia's backstory. I am glued to this episode now. I want to know everything. We did a little timeline. The Handmaid's portion, where we think was about 7 to 8 years from all the research that we can find. And the Testaments, we've been told by Elizabeth Moss, Bruce Miller, is 4 years after that. So this flashback is taking place about 11 to 12 years ago, roughly, to sort of de-age her, to give her long hair back, which we saw in, if you love her, if you love Ann Dowd, you have to go watch The Leftovers and go check that one out because it's amazing. And it's another sort of dystopian, the whole world changes in one moment kind of show, and makes you really think about like, what are your priorities? What are the things that you would try to hang on to if everything changed suddenly, so suddenly.
And a completely different character. So it gives you a good idea about Ann Dowd's range.
Yeah. Yes. But seeing her in that outfit, seeing her wear leggings, she was wearing like knee-high boots. And God, just her outfit alone, I have to mention that like when she goes into the locker room and they have like a nicer meal for her and she's going to change her clothes. The thing that I noticed as a woman, like one of the very first things I noticed was that she went from wearing like flat bottom boots, which would have been very functional, very probably supportive and really easy to like run in. They put her in these clogs with no back on them and had a heel on them that would make it infinitely harder to run. That was one of those things for me that I was like, it's a small detail, but I see you. I see you, wardrobe. I see you guys. I see how these small things made women more easy to control because they just couldn't get away fast enough.
Did you notice it was also a maxi skirt that they gave her? And
yes.
And she probably never wore pants again.
That's probably very true. Yeah. Okay, so let's start talking about the Lydia flashback. I don't know how deep you want to go. I don't know if we want to go scene by scene. I don't know how much you need to discuss this, because for me, every second was like I'm just staring at the screen, trying to absorb everything that's happening. When
I was watching the initial scene in the teacher's lounge, I was trying to compare, like you were mentioning just a minute ago, kind of the swiftness of the coup compared to what we saw with June. Because June somehow had enough time to get with Luke, collect Hannah, and try to make a run for
Try
it.
to make a plan even.
Lydia, no chance.
Right.
But June worked at a publishing house, right? Whereas stereotypically or not, schools mostly are women.
Right. Well, and government run. Public schools are a government entity. So that would be like the first place that you could go. First of all, the most vulnerable, who's there? Mostly women and children. I mean, as we've seen over all these years with school shootings, they tend to be really soft targets. And that is seemingly one of the first places they went and quickly were able to gather people.
So you can actually kind of extrapolate that schools, kind of after like military bases and that kind of stuff, would have been a super high priority.
Yes.
Because they would have collected the children. Not all the parents were going to make it, you know?
Of course not. I mean, with how quickly that all happened, I mean, yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
So, yeah, that would explain the swiftness at the school. I'm glad we talked that through. That's why that makes sense.
And like a lack of adults per child. You would have anywhere from like 20 to 25 little kids to one adult. How quick would that be to be able to collect them all up fast? Those are really good ratios for the bad guys.
You taught little kids, if men with guns showed up, would they be like, oh, men with guns? Or would they be like, this is really scary?
This day and age, everybody would be scared. I mean, adults and children alike, right? Because we know when I taught 20 years ago now. And so for me, 20 years ago, I don't know what my response would be. I think I wouldn't know if they were people who were on my side or not, because 20 years ago, we had no training for school shootings. We had nothing. There was nothing. I've never had any training for school shooting. If I saw people who looked like they were in matching uniforms, like these men look like, I might think they were police or something first. I would think they were heavily armored, you know, and like had like a lot of guns compared to like an average police officer. But I don't know if I would know to be scared right away. I think maybe is your point. Like, I'm not sure that I would immediately, like I was thinking to myself, like, would you lock the teacher's lounge door immediately? There should be a lock and a key situation with that. Would you lock it? And was there another way out? Like, could they have tried? Could you have even thought of that? What was surprising to me was the voiceover when Lydia's like, it was obvious that a coup had occurred. Like, again, would I have thought that in the teacher's lounge? Would I have thought the government must have been overthrown? That's the logical thing that's happening right now? Or would most schools, even today, even with all the Handmaid's talk and all the things that have been out there about like what could be happening in our future, would most of us think these are the good guys and something crazy is happening out there and they must be trying to protect us? I don't know what I would be thinking. Really, I would be thinking, are they here to evacuate us? Is there a problem? Are we supposed to follow these men? This is what we're supposed to do?
Up until the moment they shot that guy, anyway.
Oh my God. You guys, my reaction to that is embarrassing. If we had had a video camera on me, I jumped back in my seat, like kind of embarrassingly so, because I didn't expect to see modern times that I identified with, a place that looked like an elementary school building, a safe place for me. And to see this very mild-mannered man go out there and appear to just try to be like, hey, what's going on? Like he wasn't in any way being aggressive. He wasn't like pushing those guys in the chest or something. He was being so calm. To just see him be shot in the head. Holy smokes. I literally, Paul can tell you, like I leapt back in my seat. I was like, oh my God, I did not expect that at all. What is my problem? This is the thing. This is the problem. Like, I'm not expecting this. This is the optimism bias that I absolutely have that was brought up by Agnes. I 100% have this, despite everything in front of me and everything I know in this story, that things are, of course he's going to get shot in the head. I still jump back because I cannot believe this is actually happening in front of me in such a familiar environment to me.
I guess you never saw Red Dawn. It was one of those movies that got massive replay in the 80s on like syndication, right?
Okay.
Men start landing by parachutes in a football field. And a teacher from the high school next to the football field goes out and is like, you guys are way off. And they shoot him. And the kids are looking out the window and the kids are all of a sudden fully aware, like,
these are the bad guys.
This is a live or die situation now. I guess maybe my Cold War training.
That kicked in for you?
Yeah.
You knew right away?
Well, it made me wonder if he was gay. We saw what happened to other people.
But also, just generally speaking, though, I think that any man who wasn't already in their ranks was an enemy. You know, like I don't think they were going to coerce him into joining the sons of Jacob
true.
right then, right?
They shot Luke.
Yeah.
Just, you know, yeah, he was running, but it's not like they were like,
this
hey,
was not
do you have
recruitment day.
Do you have any usable skills? It was thinning the herd.
Well, making sure that there's nobody who can protect the women, period. Okay, so we're in this teacher's lounge. One of the most shocking moments, too, was whose turn is it to bring the coffee? Vivian. And Vivian, you guys, without her glasses, without her hair pulled back, I had to look and look and look and really make sure that that is Aunt V. That is the same Aunt V. We were watching this on a computer screen. So if you guys are like, hello, we're watching it on our giant screen TV, it was so obvious. We were watching it on a smaller computer screen. So for me, I was like, really, like, I really want to make sure that this is her, but this is her, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we tried to do like the IMDb and looking up the actress's name to be like, let's just clarify. Let's just make sure. Like, we want to be sure. We don't want to be saying this. We could not find her being, you know, given credit for this episode, but that wouldn't be out yet. For us, I was like, I cannot even believe that this is happening. And the idea that they were coworkers in the before times.
That I did not see coming at all. As just like a side note for color, I mentioned this offline to you, but we should tell everybody that at some point during the formation of the ants, it was kind of informally decided that sort of like royalty or like popes or something, when you get the appointment, you can choose a new name. You know how Fred he kind of flaunted the trappings of the old world to June. Like he gave her like a little bit of hand lotion or a fashion magazine. Well, I'm thinking more of like the women's stuff.
Oh, okay, sure.
You know?
All right.
When this happened, the women were encouraged to choose names of products, women's products from the old world. And so Vidala is not explicitly explained, but it is supposed that it is like a feminized Vidal, as in Vidal Sassoon.
Oh.
And Este, Aunt Este.
Right, like Estee Lauder.
Clearly.
Right.
And now in the book, there is an aunt that's mentioned, but never really given much to do. But her name is Aunt Gabbana.
Oh,
so
like Dolce.
Yes.
Gabbana.
So I don't know where Lydia stacks up in that, but maybe since she was Queen Bee, it was rules for thee, but not for me kind of situation.
Fascinating. What a wild way to take a name. Let's get back to what's going on here with Lydia, because they take all these women to this tennis stadium, and it's unclear at first what's going on. There is a removal of all the jewelry.
Yeah.
Now, you and I went to high school at the same time, and we were lucky enough to have a high school that cared a lot about making sure that we understood a lot about World War II. And they actually took us on a field trip to Schindler's List. So we have seen the same type of footage of jewelry being removed and those big bins of like personal effects, like jewelry, handbags, you know, in Schindler's List, it was shoes, hair, lots of other things. So we know that Margaret Atwood is wonderful about saying and being very explicit that everything you see has been done to some population at some point in time in history. Like everything you're seeing, I didn't make up any type of torture or cruelty. This has all been done to someone. So watching this process of having people sorted, of being told like, you go this way, pregnant women go to, what did they call it? Big box store?
Yeah,
Do we think that's like a Best Buy
I think
or
it
like
is.
a Walmart or something like that?
Probably a Walmart, because they needed a lot of space, but yeah.
Right. And then so all the pregnant ladies were going that way. It appeared to be maybe gender traders. We can't possibly be exactly sure, but they at least visually decided to take some of the women and get rid of them right away. They were calling them sinners.
Well, Judd found Lydia's one abortion. Maybe that's sort of like on the bubble, right? But if you're kind of a repeat customer, so to say,
true,
then maybe that's it. Or maybe I'm thinking it's disgusting, but just women that seem like they were going to be a handful.
Yeah, that's terrible to say, but I agree. I mean, they were being judged on something, and it's very difficult for us to know exactly what the criteria was because, first of all, it was happening very fast. I mean, they were sorting people very quickly. We could try to guess what the rhymes or reasons were, but, who even really knows what it was?
I wanted to emphasize real quick what you said a second ago about our area's emphasis on World War II and particularly the Holocaust. I took German in high school. And they took us to the Holocaust Remembrance Center.
Which we have one here in Houston.
In Houston.
And we also actually have one here in our town.
That...
It's not a whole museum, but we have a Holocaust garden here.
When you think about museums, you think about like learning. Sometimes the tone is semi-academic for like the little things they have on the walls, but conversational too. That is not the Holocaust Center. That you left feeling really, really bad after having seen everything that they have there, because they have the pictures of what you're talking about, what we're about to discuss, particularly with the removal of your personal items. And this is a list that you found, but I'm just going to read it since I wrote it down, that there were 4 main reasons that they took jewelry specifically, but then the other items that we saw the women have to give up also from the people that the Nazis particularly imprisoned. But we can kind of pencil in that the sons of Jacob stole some of the playbook,
Yes.
So the first one was to fund the war effort. They had all this gold and silver now. They had diamonds. They could do with it as they pleased.
Yeah, barter with other countries, barter with other groups. It's very hard for us to understand. Again, we're just trying to piece together the world that they are currently living in, what this flashback is, and like who else is out there. Were there multiple groups that could have overthrown the government? We don't even know. Or was it like just the sons of Jacob that were like coming for Congress and the Senate and everything? Like unclear, I think.
Okay. I'm going to get off on a tangent there, but that does bring up a really interesting point that's not discussed in the book, but you can kind of think about, like, even in America today, yes, we have 2 parties, but within those 2 parties, there's a lot of division.
Spectrum too,
like
from extreme to moderate to not.
Exactly. So when Lydia said in this episode that this was the first of many changes of leadership that she would endure, that made me think, like, were there sects within the sons of Jacob that kind of pulled the sons of Jacob on their own group,
That makes sense.
And wrestled power from the people that had maybe started, because there were purges, there were commander purges, and a lot of those first round commanders didn't make it.
I think that's a very fair comment, because going back to Handmaids, we know that Commander Lawrence came from a different way of thinking, and I would say like a different sect of sons of Jacob. Like, he was coming from this more academic, he wasn't so much about abusing the women or conquering the women. It was way more about creating a country for Lawrence, creating this economic situation for this group. And so he, to me, is a different type of sons of Jacob than, say, the guys who just wanted to wield the guns or wanted to beat people up or whatever. Like, he wasn't that. So I agree with you. There obviously is a wide spectrum of different types of people who would join a movement like this in different iterations. Like, okay, so now we have the economic ties or something. We don't need you anymore, and there would be like purges along the way. All of that makes sense.
All right, back to the list.
Okay.
Second thing you mentioned was that it dehumanized the victims. This reminds me a lot of boot camp, when they shave your hair and, there's no jewelry. That's when they give the basic chunky rim glasses to you if you need them. Everybody's got the same uniform. They don't have the uniforms yet, but they do have the dehumanizing, the depersonalizing. Some people, those accoutrements are what make them feel like them.
100%.
And removing was just whacking off an edge on that person's personality.
And I think that works like twofold. I think on one hand, the people themselves start to feel less human. They're more as like this, looked at as this group. But I think for the other side, like for the bad guy side, if you will, it allows them to be that much more cruel to them because they're no longer individual human beings. You don't have to look that person in the eye and think of them as a person. If you look at them with their, children's locket and necklace on them or their wedding ring or there's something like that, conjures up your own humanity and makes you think about your own spouse, or it makes you think of your own children or whatever. But if this person is stripped down of all of like what you would consider like a personhood, then you can be that much more cruel to them. And it also, of course, affects the victim, starts to make them feel like they're losing their individuality and who they are.
Which ties into the third item, which is to strip them of their assets that they have on them. They're carrying around wealth, Mm-hmm. Some people wear a lot of money on their hands and necks and ears at all times.
And to that point, like the redistribution then, right? That like the have and the have nots, like let's take from all of these women and now the men can have these things, or whoever they see fit can have them. And so it's a redistribution of that same wealth.
Which was the fourth item. We did see that some of the things of not quite as great value, but maybe some utility, like their handbags and stuff like that, were also sorted into another area, which I could imagine some would be usable on another market.
Yeah, it's hard for us to know, but we were talking about how, like I was asking you, I don't know exactly the history of why they shave heads, especially like, let's go back to the concentration camps. I always assumed that it was things like lice or some sort of disease or something like that they were trying to keep from going, running rampant. But when I read, it was like, no, because they didn't even sanitize the clippers between people. So no, that wasn't the point of it. They actually used that hair again for the dehumanizing factor. But also you could identify those people faster. Obviously, if you tried to escape and you had a shaved head, you were clearly in the wrong place and you were clearly, escaping. So they could spot you easier. But also I was reading to you, like they literally used the hair to make socks, to make all these different types of like material for people who are in submarines, people who are working on the railroad. They used it for rope, like all these different things. So like we can't even as like a modern society sort of wrap our brain around like how, if you had to be that resourceful, if you had to think about like, well, what could you use different parts that someone has on their body? What could you use them for? But I mean, they really did try to find all these different ways.
Gross.
I don't want to wear hair socks.
Yeah, so
it sounds horrible. And the whole thing is, this is what we were talking about like it's hard to even for me to even like laugh or for you to say like gross, but like because this is all so heavy and so serious, and why it's so difficult to watch these people be treated this way. Watch women, watch people, our local school teachers, our local friends to be treated this way. Very frightening, very scary.
You just reminded me of something like because I was looking at our notes and the things that they were doing in terms of like sorting. There were some people that they sorted right away.
Yes. Like
that short-haired woman.
Yeah.
Pregnant women, they figured out another thing to do with, but then other women got interviewed. And in that interview, like I mentioned a second ago about the abortion, and then before that I was mentioning just sort of how deeply the cracks in our support, our government and other things must have gone to get all these men to collaborate. How would they have gotten that medical information? That's not just like on your DMV information. Right. That's HIPAA. That's like really closely protected under our rules.
Well, but regular humans have access to that. I mean, yes, they are protected, but from the general public. But if you wanted to make files for everyone in a certain area, you just have to have some people who work at the hospital or work at local doctor's offices to just make photocopies or make notes, write stuff down, whatever they needed. I mean, they did obviously have a file on everyone. Mm-hmm. And it is scary. Again, it makes you think like, who's looking at my stuff and what are they doing with it? And we all know that from just like regular identity fraud kind of things. I mean, we've all gotten those kind of creepy text messages that are like, your password's been compromised and we're looking at all your stuff and we know everything about you. And that's all so scary. But like, what if they had like an actual paper file right in front of you and they start quizzing you about things you've done in your life and things you thought were private?
Or maybe it's not even medical. Maybe it's
who your friends are.
Technological. Like the other day, I was mentioning that I need different underwear, but I did it in front of Caroline. And her phone showed her an advertisement for men's underwear.
Yeah.
And that
specifically the issue he was talking about, it thought it could help with. So yeah, no, good call. I mean, our own technology, we know that Alexas listen to us. We know they do. We know that I'm even lowering my voice. I'm like, oh my God, she's in the other room. Like, I mean, like seriously, like, yeah, everything. And, you know, I've seen that work to the other way. Like there's like TikToks where women will go over to their husband's phone and be like, anniversary dinner, like diamonds, whatever the thing is that they want, right? I'm being very stereotypical. Maybe they want something totally different, but specifically say it into their husband's phone over and over and over and over again so that the ads do populate for those things, like because you can manipulate what technology is showing you. So you're totally right. There's so many different ways that they could have been gathering information on these women, but also it's pretty easy to get a lot of that information, I think. I mean, they would have been teachers at the school, which means there would have been like a file on them in personnel. You only have to really get one person to be like working in the office or whatever.
I'm wondering how many women they could have conned into helping them.
I think what we've seen in this episode was there was a lot of women on women abuse. There was a lot of women who had to turn on other women, maybe even wanted to turn on other women. I don't know. But in this episode, we saw a really good parallel with Lydia having to turn on Vivian. We saw Hulda having to turn on Shu. They did a really good job of showing it at different levels and how you feel like your hands are tied. Literally, what do you do? Like, what else can you do? And is it, the question I thought Lydia asked was so well written. Am I a phoenix rising from the ashes, or am I a cockroach? Like just trying to survive? Like, which is it? And am I surviving? You know, am I thriving? I thought that question was brilliant. And I also thought the concept of, she said a line where she said, innocence can be lost in a variety of ways. I felt that as the viewer, to be honest with you. My innocence about what this show was going to show us was lost several different ways, like psychologically, emotionally, all the different things that my characters went through. I was feeling it. I was feeling those levels at the different points of having to turn on your friend. And Lydia did such a good job with the voiceover of bringing it again back to the Aunt Lydia school and saying like friendships are a liability. And I try to instill that in my girls, even though that sounds wild and crazy. Like, why would you tell girls not to have best friends? Well, because she has gone through this. Now we see her motivation. Now we see why she could have been, I don't know, quote unquote, weak in that situation and not pull the trigger on Vivian. I don't know how you look at it. I don't know how you say it's strong, weak. I don't know what the right word is there. You may be tested because of your friendship, and that friendship is something that makes you vulnerable.
What you're talking about relates to one of the changes from the book to the show, but with the change they made keeps Lydia consistent with Handmaid's Lydia. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So I think that we had actually said in the previous series podcast that Lydia was dedicated to this ideal that she had to be hard because these women and girls would not survive this setting, that they had no chance of escaping any other way unless they had the rules drilled into them.
And that they had built enough, like, not just like metaphorical thick skin, but like actual thick skin, like have seen so much that they were desensitized and could move past it. You know, have seen, I think that's why they bring the man in to like cut off his hand and stuff like that. Like, because if you keep making someone feel like I can endure anything, I can see anything and go back to my studies, there's something about that while it's ghoulish and cruel and torturous, I think, to do to children, I can see your point and what you're saying about Lydia, that like she felt like the best way to have these girls be able to survive is to be able to have them have that like spine of steel, be able to see anything, witness anything, be a part of anything, and still wake up the next day, not crater.
At the end of the flashback section, we'll mention Lydia's evolution in her way that she's thinking about things. But this change is that her resolve commentary that she made toward the end of the episode was always there.
Right.
Like she was so insulted by the things that she had seen and had to do and been forced to do. Maybe not insulted is the right word, but I'm going to use
like
insulted.
Humiliated. Like they took her dignity.
Yeah.
by having to act in ways that she would never act.
She became hard and decided that I am going to bring this down, but I have to do it this certain way. And this certain way is working within the system, helping more women survive the system, even though that journey is going to be terrible for them, but it's the only way to get them ready to survive.
Yeah.
That's the big change, though, is that she always had it in the book. Here, she gains it after the massacre at Jezebel's.
She definitely said that she had been following a plot line of resolve beforehand. Now she's needing to follow a plot line of survival.
Yeah.
That, again, struck me. I was like, excellent writing, made me really think about what that means and what was going on with her before and how she had to transform. You know, there were parts to all of this that made me feel like, first of all, I gotta say, I was actually surprised at some parts where I identified with Lydia. And this is gonna sound really weird. When she goes in and is like actually tasked for picking the fabric for the ants, and she chooses this like heavy, scratchy wool, sweaty kind of material. When she says the thing that like one of her things that she dislikes about like what her like before times were, was that everybody had this huge focus on comfort. Why this like strikes me so hard is because I have said many, many, many times, whether it's just about fashion in general, or if it's like on this bigger scale of like invention, ingenuity, technologically moving forward in some way, the concept of how much we're trying to make things more comfortable all the time blows my mind. I don't feel like any other generation has had the concept of like, my comfort is paramount over getting ahead, over hard work, over being able to give something more to my children than I had before, being comfortable. And like, I was like joking with you. I was like, as I've said this to you many times, like things are advertised as like buttery soft fabric. And like, at what point is like, enough's enough. Whoever's working on that invention, go cure cancer. Like, stop working on making fabrics softer and softer and softer. Like, I know it sounds so silly and like a really weird point, but you know how you've mentioned to me, like, why is specific comedy so important?
Yeah.
Like, why does it make it more funny if they use a really, really specific example?
Yeah.
And we've talked about that like a lot. This is one of those moments that hit me because it was a really, really specific thing that I've talked about that Lydia mentions, and I was like, oh my God. Like, makes you feel like Lydia was like under my bed, or Bruce Miller or somebody was like listening, because there is a wild fascination or fixation on everything is supposed to be comfortable at all times.
It is interesting to look at. I have a personal theory, and you may shoot it down right away.
Oh no.
It seems to me the way that I'll say women dress has gotten to be more comfortable than it used to be, unless they're trying to impress somebody, right? The default setting is comfort. My theory is that men did it first. Men are slovenly looking children, you know?
It is weird how like 5-year-olds dress the same as 50-year-old men.
Yeah. It's funny when you see like a 70-year-old, but he's wearing like a Stussy t-shirt or something,
Or,
you know?
I'm sorry, like Scooby-Doo. I've seen like Scooby-Doo recently on like adult men.
All
and
right.
I want to be like, oh.
Well, that outdoes my Stussy t-shirt, but you get the idea.
I totally do.
And so I think subconsciously, as a group, and I'm just talking about North America here, I don't know how it works everywhere else, women saw us phoning it in and were like, you know what?
I don't know.
That's the standard? Fine.
I won't shoot down your theory at all, because I've definitely heard women say like, it's really weird that I dress my toddler the same as what's in my husband's closet. Like, that does feel like, why is there no growth and no change? And it is based on like what's comfortable: basketball shorts, you know, sneakers and an old t-shirt, like all that kind of stuff. Whereas women's fashion has changed tons over the years. I mean, from, you know, bustles and girdles and all that kind of stuff into, you know, athleisure. And don't get me wrong, like, I want things to be comfortable. I'm not saying that, but we have this giant, it's like a wooden sign that's in our one daughter's room that says like, she can do hard things. Being comfortable is not paramount over being successful, reaching your goals, doing the things you want to do, whatever it is, whether it's education, whether it's money, whether it's personal growth, whatever the thing is, you have to, the concept of getting out of your comfort zone has been thrown out the window. No one wants to get out of their comfort zone.
Well, I think we were taught, and this is getting away from the show, but I think we were taught that comfort is something that you earn.
Ooh, I agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
even on Survivor, they literally, there's like a rewards thing, and they say like the rewards is comfort, and they'll give them like blankets and pillows and stuff. Like, yeah, it's literally taught as reward.
but maybe the concept of working for 40 years and then you earn your comfort is just lost its appeal.
Oh no, and I totally agree. Like, you guys, if you're out there thinking like I'm not wearing athleisure every day, I certainly am. I'm wearing it right now. I'm wearing running shorts and a t-shirt right now. We're both wearing sneakers. I'm not wearing heels anywhere. Like, I get the utility of it, and that comfort is important. I just found it fascinating that it was a Lydia actual moment where she chose to say, kind of, to your point, like, we need to toughen up, like so you are going to wear a fabric that's sweaty and hot and scratchy, because if that's your complaint of the day, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, and if you can put up with scratchy fabric, then I hope you can put up with something else, whatever that is. And so it does come down to survival, right? It does come down to, she just wants you to be able to live another day and not have your psyche just crash. It's a fascinating look into like what that's all about, how you make people be able to endure. There's probably an entire whole podcast we could do separate that's just about what do people do to toughen up and be at this place where they can handle anything. Also, we have 3 special needs kids, so I have to throw that in case you are new to our podcast. And we very much understand sensory issues, and we very much understand we've got it all going on in our house. So we very much understand the importance of it and the way that it does take your central nervous system down to like a manageable level. But fascinating that like when it comes to survival, what has to go by the wayside.
Right.
Let's talk about a couple things that were surprising. One, Commander Judd. What? We had just talked about in a previous episode that I had been asking you, why in the world is he sitting at the right hand of Lydia at the ball? What in the world gives this man this status? I thought surely, and I mean, I would have put money on it, that Bruce Miller was going to bring out Fred Waterford as being one of the prime sorters, maybe even Nick. But Judd, seeing him, and with the only difference of having like a little bit longer, a little bit curlier hair, but really not that much different. Yes, he was not in like a commander suit, but nobody was, because they weren't at a ball, and that's the last time we saw him. It could have even been Commander Lawrence. Like, it could have been a lot of different people that they could have brought back from Handmaids that could have made this like guest appearance and been like, bah, bah, bah. This is also a little backstory on that guy. I would have been like just roaring at the screen like, oh my God. So what did you think that it was Judd?
A, it was Judd in the book. But B, I think intertwining Lydia and Judd so that like that line that Lydia says much later, don't you trust me, Commander Judd?
After all of this time, right?
Yeah. I think that's important to give them history, kind of an anchor. The fact that she made her play. She shot her shot, if you will.
She literally pulled the trigger on her friend. Were you shocked that it was a blank? I mean, we knew it was Aunt V by that point, right? We had really pretty much figured it out by that point. I know it sounds stupid, you guys. And again, just please remember it was a small computer screen. So if you recognized it was Aunt V immediately, we just were like really, really, really trying to scrutinize her face and make sure we were seeing who we thought we were seeing, because it almost seemed too crazy that it would be.
So show-wise, I think it was really important for the future Vidala to know that Lydia would have shot her.
Yeah.
Now, in the book, all the women died. And she was just told later, yours had a blank, don't worry about it. But all the women got shot. So it was like a kind of a different setup. But she did still have
to... More like a firing squad?
More like that.
Okay,
yeah.
So you can't know your one
she
was
didn't,
blank.
She didn't know ahead of time, no. But she did have to go through that same...
A trial.
Devotion.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to how Lydia gets on the other end of that gun and is not actually one of the ones in the lineup. What did you think about this entire play that she had, because she went with the first one of like, oh, I think you guys are doing a great job, and he's like, you know how many women have said that? And I was like, oh damn, because that would have been my play too. So I'd have been like, oh, I was over here hoping you guys were coming recruiting us, so like I'm so glad you got here. What can I do to help?
I didn't see it coming because I have to keep going back to the book, but in the book it was already decided that women's stuff was beneath the notice of men. They already knew that, and they just needed the right women to figure out what to do with the rest of them. Lydia was a candidate for that because in the book, she was a judge, not a teacher.
Oh, okay.
Not that this is incompatible with that. Her being a teacher, saying someone needs to teach them, that probably makes more sense than applying a judge's experience to
an aunt, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that makes sense. So I give Lydia a lot of credit. And again, we're building this character. We've always thought she was a smart, savvy woman. We've always thought she had like this amazing ability to survive these unimaginable circumstances. But watching her sort of think on her feet and having to come up with like, oh shit, like if all the other women already said this, like, what am I going to say now? And creating this whole concept of a women's sphere and a man's sphere. It didn't sound like, well, like you're saying in the book, they had already figured that out. I don't know if Judd had completely figured that out or if anybody else had figured that out yet, that like we would be better off to hand it off to women and stop trying to be dealing with that at all. Like, do you think that was the goal? Were they looking for ants that day? Were they looking for the concept of an ant, or did she sort of bring it to them in that conversation?
I think she created her own position. I think they were looking for candidate women that were going to fit in, be somehow useful to the group. It's a little weird that they didn't know how. I could see why the appeal of her idea, the separate spheres, would automatically probably gain a lot of traction. Judd probably had to take that idea to the older guys.
Yeah, because there was time between when we have the interview and when she's like being told to pick out the fabric. I'm not saying like days and days, but there was some amount of time between the fabric moment and that interview moment, and to the point where like Judd could go to higher ups and be like, listen, I got this one lady and she's completely pitching this concept of like, why don't we just let the teachers teach, and like why don't we give them the curriculum and tell them like this is what the women need to know, and like we can just get out of here and go do the other stuff. We can go deal with war, we can go deal with whatever they decided was man business. I don't know what. Is that logical that he like literally just called his higher ups and then was like, let's create that then?
Yeah, that makes total sense in what we saw.
Going back to Lydia's concept of like you lose your innocence in a variety of ways, I thought the way that they kept them all in that stadium and they were feeding them bread and water like prisoners. There didn't seem to be bathrooms. Like they pretty much had to stay where they were. A lot of those parts to it, like all times a day, you're hearing women like cry out and scream and being grabbed and all this stuff. There was a lot going on there that even just listening, like the auditory stuff, was like hurting my heart. I don't know how you felt about how they layered in the abuse of these women. Like it wasn't just snatching them up and then they like were kind after that, or even neutral after that. Like they continued to make them scream and holler and cry.
Yes. And it seemed like it was relentless. Maybe they weren't bothering you right now, but they were bothering somebody.
Yeah. And taking your friend.
And there wasn't even like a, miss, we need you right now. It was they would nudge them with the butt of a rifle and be like and like lift them up by their armpits, you know. But
that's what I think about how you get men to go along with it. Like you have to dehumanize those women. They can't say miss. That's what was like kind of a surprising thing when that one guy did say, miss, you'll get your personal belongings back. And he kind of did have like a kind face. Like that was like, oh dude, I don't know how you didn't get shot like right then for just being that human to her, you know, that kind. Because the rest of them, it seems like it's almost mandatory for them to grab you up by the arm and hit you with the butt of the gun and stuff, rather than just talk to you like, could you stand up, come with me? Because I think most women would have just stood up and went with them. I don't know, I can't say, but I think if the choice was, watching people get hit all the time versus just like standing up and going, I think people would just go. I think it has to be part of it, right? To make it for them less difficult to do this to the women.
There was quite a bit more description in the book about the conditions in the stadium, like the bathrooms became a problem right away. And we saw like that woman urinating in like the aisle. Yeah. And that was enough to tell us what was going on. Lydia was not initially compliant with Judd. And so Judd had her sent to like some sort of solitary confinement for a little bit to see if she would change her mind. It did. I'm glad we didn't see that though.
I wonder though, even maybe it was a nod to that by taking Vivian away and having her sit there alone for a while, because no one was really talking to one another. I know that one lady kind of said, sorry about your friend, but like that sort of was her having to stew in her own.
She had a different buddy in the book.
Okay.
So that scene was just sort of changed a little bit, but your connection to Vivian is probably much worse than the solitary confinement, being forced to shoot your friend.
Right. But also just having to sit there, not knowing where she went and what happened. Like she was having to stew in her own thoughts and think about like, well, what are they going to do to me when they come for me? Because that was not the anticipation. When they were sitting there together, they may not have been thinking like they're coming for us. But once your friend gets taken, now you're sitting there thinking like, well, how much longer till they come take me? And like that's a different level of anxiety.
Seems like they would have been wearing like numbers or something. Because the men knew right where to go.
But they had the files with the pictures. So,
okay.
And it's possible that they were sat in places, maybe this was the entire school was sitting in this area.
Fair,
and whatever, different schools. So that was a lot on Lydia. We found out a lot about how she got to be the way she was, why she is the way she is, why she has the outlook on life in general, and why she is so tough on the girls, because she really feels like she is doing what she needs to do to have them survive. And I think that makes all of the things that she does, I think you can look at it in a different light if you see it as like she's trying to keep you alive and keep you from losing your mind. Because I think that's what we saw, like, again, going back to Handmaids, like Commander Lawrence's wife. Losing your mind is a very real possibility, just a break with reality and not being able to handle what's happening. That's enough for you to lose your life. A lot going on there. But I was happy that we got that transition. I was happy that and happy is a weird word, but it filled in a lot of blanks.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on over to our current timeline, where we are busily having our aunts do a parallel sorting, if you will, sorting of the matches of the greens with the husbands, commanders, if you will.
It's interesting you mentioned the parallels, because I wanted to mention the parallels that I found right here at our kind of halfway segment, because there's parallels from either the flashback to the current timeline or, I believe, testaments to handmaids.
Okay.
Like you just said, the process of selection, someone unknown to you or not partial to you, deciding your fate for the rest of your life, whether your life only lasts 15 more minutes or the next 80 years. Someone else is deciding that for you in both halves of this story.
Right. And there's like a sorting of hierarchy of those people too.
Then it occurred to me that journal that we saw at the very end was very much like June's letters.
Yes.
And I hadn't thought about that before, but now Lydia finds herself in kind of a June type position. Not completely, it's not 100%, but that one element does echo what we saw before.
I would also even throw in a third parallel with Serena Joy, and you could go with like the power of the pen and the power of chronicling what's going on, whatever. That Serena Joy's books was a big part of how people got sort of brainwashed into thinking this was a good idea, and the idea of like a woman writing something could change the course of history, writing, which I think that Margaret Atwood, as an author could think, look at the power of the pen, like look at what you can do if you simply write it down.
And then that third one we'll get to, but in the scene with Lydia and Vidala and the shooting lineup, that parallels something we're about to mention, which is Hulda and Shu.
That was a really tough scene for me to watch. I mean, Hulda could barely do it. We were seeing a lot of the same emotions that we saw out of Lydia. Like, I can't do this to my friend. I don't know what to do. But also realizing, like, in order to save myself, to not be going against what the system is, I have to show my allegiance here, right? I have to show that I'm willing to be loyal and go along with this.
Well, Hulda is all in. I don't think there's any doubts in her mind about what she needs to do.
But she doesn't want to hurt her friend. That's what I'm saying. Like, there is a part of compassion. There is a part of, I mean, she gets chastised because she's not holding Shu's hands on the desk. Like, she's letting her pull back. But
the moment when Vidal is like, what do you think the proper punishment for a girl like this would be? And
she said it.
And I wonder, though, if, like, since we haven't seen real enmity between those two, was she just giving the expected response? Like we saw with the girls on the balcony, with the guardian in the hand, they were giving the expected response because the aunts, if you didn't, would rile you up to either give it or they would do it anyway.
Or do it to you too.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. So that's the part. Like, that's where it patterns over what happened with Lydia. Like, if you don't shoot this gun, you're going to be shot. Hulda, if you don't give a punishment to Shu, you're going to be punished. That's the twisted innocence part of being lost, of being like, I have to turn into my own, abuser here, by being a part of the system. It's a whole thing. I felt awful for them. I have to go back to some feeling of like, I'm surprised that they would use corporal punishment visibly on Shu like that, on her hands, because she will have scars the rest of her life. I know that they were cool taking Serena Joy's finger. I know that, and she's a wife. I can't believe that they would leave marks on their auctioned off girls. You know what I mean? Like, making them brush their teeth with that Grosso soap mess or whatever. That's one thing, but it doesn't leave a mark, right? So I was surprised that they went through with punishment that would like damage the goods. So
many of the skills that they teach the wives, like the loom and the cross stitch and all the other stuff that's, if you fuck up this poor girl's fingers.
And her hands themselves, though, like, if you think about how easy it would be to just like shred up your palms, like really create like horribly deformed looking hands, like really quickly, like that's something you can't hide. I was very surprised by that punishment, not just like the act of it, not how horrible it looked and all that stuff, but that they would literally take what they are considered these prize girls and deform them in some way. That just seemed wild to me. I
wonder if they could have just chosen the dirty girl chair screaming, and that would have been in punishment too.
Wasn't there also like a mention of having to like stand in the lunchroom for like an entire day? Didn't Agnes have to do that? Like, it was something like that. It was like an entire, like, almost going to say like 24 hours or something like that. There were other punishments that were mentioned where you weren't, again, there's no scarring on you. It's psychological. It's painful in other ways, but it's not, you don't have all these scars on you. I mean, even when you're just dancing, as modest as you would be, like, you could see her hands.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I was really surprised that that's the way that they would go with that.
Tough scene to watch. This episode, like you were getting back to in the beginning of our podcast here about kind of filling the episodes with things that you may not want to see, but they make compelling storytelling, at least to this viewer. But this episode had a lot of it. Changing gears a little bit. Maybe this will stimulate us back to what was going on with the ants and the plums. Judd, his wife is having preterm labor at their house, and he's at the Aunt Lydia school.
I thought they had, but it was in the nurse's office that she had heard about it, that Shu had heard about it. Like, she had gone to go get her hands done.
Yeah.
I thought that's why Judd was there. I thought that they had brought her to the nurse's office.
Yeah, but why was Judd himself at the girls' school?
Because I thought she was in the nurse's office. That's what I thought. That's what I was getting.
Penny?
Yeah.
At the school?
I said all that already.
Yeah, but we've seen the birthing process takes place at home.
I totally agree. But also, this was like an emergency, right? I have no idea. I thought there was more going on. I thought that's why Judd was there. That's really honestly what I thought.
No, he was there because he couldn't stand hearing the the proceedings, whatever they were doing.
Well, he was in the cafeteria though of the school.
I
believe. Listen, I'll take your as like a possibility. I was taking it like they had brought Penny to the school, and Shunammite had heard about it because she was also in the school nurse thing, and she was getting her hands done. Because why wouldn't the midwives and stuff also be housed out of the school? Maybe Judd had brought her there, and then when he was sitting alone in like the cafeteria. That was because he couldn't stand to be in the room wherever they were doing this. And don't take it like the school nurse, like the little tiny room at the elementary school. Take it like if the part of the midwife place, however, that all worked, was also part of Lydia's school. I thought that's just a potential. Maybe you're 100% right. Maybe she was back at home and for some reason he sought refuge at the girls' school. That seems odd.
Well, he found some busy work, removing the commanders that had been sent to the front from the pool of eligible guys.
And maybe that's why he was there, in all honesty. Maybe he was done dealing with it at home and it was being horrible and terrible at home. So you're right. Maybe he just came over to bring the message like, hey, take out these guys. And also I'm going to just sit in the cafeteria for a while because I don't want to go home because this is sad.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go with that too. I'm just willing to say that perhaps there was a midwife section at the school.
Did you catch any mention of Penny's actual condition?
Penny herself?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, we can assume by what everything else happened that they lost the baby.
100%.
But I was wondering
is Judd going to be back on the eligibility block? Is that what you're thinking?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. But they didn't say anything about Penny specifically that I recall, that I noted.
Nothing about her health, no. But does that set up an Agnes Judd situation?
I think it might. I think it very much might.
Oh boy, that's scary. That's scary. But I think that's perfectly reasonable.
We're kind of jumping around a little bit, but one thing leads to another. The thought process just gives what it gives, right?
Mm-hmm. One of the parts of this episode that I actually felt like, again, was this world building and this understanding of how everything works is watching that overhead shot of when the aunts were coming in and they were bringing in the folders with all of the girls' faces, how much that paralleled seeing Lydia's picture on the outside of the file, in Judd's office back at the stadium. Here we had Agnes's picture, paper clipped on the outside of the file, and we saw them laying them all out. I saw the largest lazy Susan I've ever seen in my whole life, where they put all the files in the middle and spun it.
It's the laziest Susan.
I thought it was cool. I kind of wanted a lazy Susan like that on my kitchen table. That whole process of each aunt getting a stack of files, and clearly Lydia at the end of the day was going to have the final say on everything. How shocked were you that Agnes was able to sit down and talk with Lydia, first of all, just sort of in the foyer of the school, not even in a private office, and make such a bold request that Garth Chapin be added to the mix?
When she started to say it, I thought, this is ballsy and unrealistic. But then I thought to myself, I used to know teenage girls, and they would say, there were some that were bold enough to say what they wanted.
Wow. What kind of teenage girls do you know?
None currently, but I used to know one, and she spoke her mind.
We met each other in high school, y'all. So yeah, for sure. I probably would have asked something like this. And obviously Lydia and Agnes have a special relationship. It's very clear. You pointed out the winking, at the tea, and Lydia is, while stern, she is still reasonable. She's still somebody who you can talk to, and, she can correct your language, and she can be like, oh, are you speaking a little out of turn? But she still is listening to Agnes, right? What does it mean that she actually added Garth to the mix? Were you surprised that she did? And what does that mean? Because if it's not going to Agnes, what the heck does this mean?
Yes, it did surprise me. It might be. This is a flyer. This is just a string of uncooked spaghetti against the wall that I'm about to lay on you. Okay,
let's hear it.
Since Lydia did not like the match for Becca because of the drinking incident, what if she gets paired with Garth? Because Garth wouldn't have had any preferences or any other kind of thing, and Becca, they said, didn't have any other potentials.
I see what you're saying. That's true. Huh. Well, and if you go from the aspect of what if you want to keep Agnes from having close ties right? Because like friendships are dangerous and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then that would immediately cause a rift between Becca and Agnes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can start to like separate that friendship if you give Garth to Becca. That's a whole problem.
I just came up with that.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. It's definitely there. Now, the other part of it that we have to remember about Garth is that Garth is a part of Mayday. And we are supposing that Lydia at least knows something about Mayday, whether she's 100% part of it or not, don't know, but is at least somewhat of a sympathizer. Don't know exactly to what end. I know you've read the book and I know you've got answers, but for me, as just a viewer, you know, the winking, the sort of like, come on with the ceremonies and stuff like that. And of course, everything that happened in Handmaids. I mean, we know where she came to at the end of Handmaids. So understanding that there's some part of her that is pro-Mayday, for lack of a better word. What does that mean? Like, what does Garth represent as being a Mayday post, right? Being a Mayday commander? Does he go to Becca? Because that kind of like actually makes him a lame duck in terms of like that's not the best like status for him. Like go the other way. While that might be a good pick for Becca, because like likely Garth's not going to hurt her and all that kind of stuff. But does that kind of make Garth a less effective Mayday person because now he's not going to be looked at like as the other commanders as the ones who have the best wives, right? So is that problematic?
It is. Just narratively, what you described about the rift between Agnes and Becca is way better TV fodder.
Yeah.
Because I've told you basically that I like this guy.
She said, I love this guy. She described all the butterflies in her belly and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Now it almost seems inevitable that that's the match.
Wow. That'll be a lot. I do not think for any reason it's Agnes.
No.
So then I don't know what to make of that. That's a good one, I think.
Your point is well taken about the Mayday.
Because he needs to be put in a good position too. And so giving him like the worst pick wife, I mean, I suppose you could just say because he's the youngest, newest commander, he would get the worst pick wife anyway, right?
If he gets one.
Right, of course. Maybe he doesn't even get one.
In previous episodes, we were kind of wondering, like, was the ball like a kind of like a clearinghouse? Like the objective is to take all these 15-year-old girls and marry 100% of them?
Oh, that's a good point.
Or
can you go to the next season?
Right. The implication I got from this episode was that, yes, it is meant to clear the slate for the next group.
I would agree with you because I don't think they would want to delay any amount of fertile women. Like they wouldn't want to lose any amount of time, right? Like if you were actively fertile now and could have a baby, then we want to get you right away married the first month you could get pregnant. You know, like that's the goal. So we wouldn't want to wait 6 months or a year or something like that. That would go against the whole point, right? For a lot of it. Plus, in theory, you have girls like getting older every day and, you know, you kind of just like every other school, like, you know, social promotion, whatever, like you got to keep moving everybody up, right? Everybody's got to go because we've got younger ones coming up to take your spots. Shoot. Okay. I will get on the Becca Garth bandwagon and say maybe so. And maybe that's even goes to our previous episode where I was telling you about like the getaway gang, basically like Becca and them talking about taking applesauce and stuff like that. Maybe it's a Lydia move to have Becca with Garth, meaning like then Becca can get out, you know, like because she knows she needs to.
I don't know the level of complicity between Lydia and Garth.
Same. I don't know either.
I think there is something. Maybe they'd never interact, but maybe they also know that each other is in the same.
Just in the web.
Yeah.
Which makes sense to me on some level. But at the same time, you know, they said to Garth, like, what did June say? It's like, who's June? Right? So it's like, we know there are people in the network that don't know about each other. And that's, you know, the smart way to do a network, right? You don't want everybody to know everybody else. That's no good. We did have some one-off stuff that we need to talk about because they added some texture to the story. We have the Daisy and Este scene where Este reveals that she became an aunt because she was the original Pearl Girl. So she is a convert to this whole thing. She wasn't snatched, I guess. She willingly came to Gilead.
Which I think, given the rest of the episode is very Lydia focused and them dropping this right now, because we're talking about futures, whose future lies along which path. I think dropping the idea specifically that a Pearl girl can become an aunt.
Ooh, is that supposed to make us think about Daisy?
I think that's supposed to make us think about Daisy.
Okay, that there is a path from going from a Pearl girl to an aunt.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's sensible. And I know you had mentioned that perhaps Becca could also potentially become an aunt.
I think that's like plan B, is like just bringing up that becoming an aunt is a route at all.
Okay.
Daisy, plan A, Becca, plan B.
Okay, got you on that one. We also had that very uncomfortable scene of the Hulda certification process with Aunt V. The only way that I could handle that scene was the fact that Hulda did not seem to be in distress. She seemed okay with the process and did not seem like she was going to walk out of there feeling assaulted in some way or feeling
humiliated
or molested in some way or whatever the right word is. All the words, right? All the negative words. And also that Aunt V did not seem to take any pleasure in doing this. Like that she was pretty grossed out herself. She didn't want to do this. That unwillingness, like if she was gleefully wanting to do this and or Hulda was like crying or not wanting to do this, that whole scene would have been way worse for me. Just watching them prepare the chair and crap. Anytime there's a line like take off your underwear, I just want to pretty much throw up on the floor. Like I'm instantly like, I don't want to see anything else, please. I thought, again, we're trying to give them like a pat on the back when we can. I thought that Bruce Miller and the writers and everything did as good a job as you can, that like we have to show you what this certification is in some way. But I felt like they tried to make it the least traumatic for all of us.
Well, and it's not something that can be faked.
Right.
Probably, anyway.
Right.
I agree with everything. I'm not going to elaborate a lot because I don't have a lot to add, except the pain in my stomach knotting up watching this scene was a little like when like a sex scene shows up on a movie you're watching with your parents. You're like, ugh, take the grander context out of it, just sort of that visceral reaction to what you're watching, kind of like that.
I'm with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I had a gut punch kind of reaction. Like I said, even when they were just preparing the room, even when I just heard the certification thing, I was like, oh, like, why do we have to have this stuff? I understand that there needs to be a certification process of some sort because clearly the aunts and the school itself's like credit, their legitimacy is on the line if they were to have somehow word got out that somebody claimed that they were fertile and they really weren't. Like, I can imagine that would be a really big deal.
It seems like one of those rules that might have cropped up because someone did.
Ooh, that's true.
You know how rules like that work?
Yeah.
Ruins it for everybody else.
Or you have like a big sign that's like you can't put your fingers in the tiger's cage stuff. Like, yeah. Because somebody did it. Okay. Are we ready to do a little bit of predictions here? Are we ready to sort of figure out like, so what? I know we've been doing it throughout, but is there anything that we feel like is standing out as like, okay, now that we know this backstory maybe about Lydia, can we make any more inferences that like what her storyline is going to look like for the rest of this?
I think her role as a sympathizer, like you said, will become clearer, but maybe not next episode, probably not next episode. I think next episode is going to be really focused on how this episode ended, which is the aunts handing out the assignments or matches or whatever the right terminology is. Mm-hmm. And us finding out that Agnes didn't get who she wanted. Is it Judd? We shall see.
I mean, if Penny dies in childbirth or in the miscarriage somehow, maybe she just bleeds out. Anything. They said multiple times. I mean, it's very plausible and very unclear how much medical intervention they do, because there's medications you can give to help pregnancies, stay, progesterone, stuff like that. We went through fertility stuff. I mean, there are things that they could be intervening. And how did you feel about the part where Lydia asked about the handmaid? And like that's like the first time that word got brought up in the Testaments.
I loved it because there were kind of two callbacks, right, to the previous show. There was that, and where Judd said, that's not really your job anymore. And she implied, well, I still know the people over there.
Well, and the amongst friends. like that. Like
Yeah.
that was also like a like an explosive line. Like, well, we could do this amongst friends. Like, oh damn, like this whole thing was very revealing about all of it. And I should say this. I know that Lydia's heart is not in this for the wrong reasons. Like, I do believe that the reason why she's doing everything she's doing is exactly what we've already said. The trying to toughen up these girls to be able to handle the society that they have to live in, that she knows they can't escape. So she firmly believes like she is doing them a gigantic favor and maybe life-saving favor by making sure that they are tough enough to handle everything. But also that concept of like friends and even implying that she or Judd would do anything outside the system was kind of like well, you know, I could just, and like just take my little reenactment there. I could, well, you know, we could just you know, we have the power to do whatever. It's kind of like because like, was that dangerous for her to say to him?
I think it's more indicative of their ongoing working relationship and her continuing to try to push the idea that she's trustworthy for him. She's an asset for him. So I'll help you, you know?
Mm-hmm. But do you see what I'm saying? Why that could be a real double-edged sword? Especially for somebody like Lydia, who's already like, hey, you're not in charge of the handmaids, and you know why you're not in charge of the handmaids. To say like, well, we don't have to really like tell anybody. Like, we could just do this amongst friends. Like, did you not see that as like, that Judd could like prick up his ears and be like, you're willing to do things outside the system, friend?
Yeah. Well, we know the commanders are sometimes loosey-goosey about
They're
the system.
always loosey-goosey, Paul. They're willing to do whatever they want, whenever they want.
The second mention, though, was at the end of the episode when she talks about her journal after Jezebel's, and she mentions something about or maybe I'm getting the timing wrong, but she mentions the sting of her failure with the handmaids had faded. It's all she described it as. But just referencing that old show, kind of giving us a little bit of a bridge between shows. By sting, she might mean a lot more than that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Beyond personal feeling of failure. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I just love when they expand the world, you know?
I about that journal, because I would love to hear your interpretation of what you think she was writing in there, because the voiceover was saying things like, it's very dangerous to write down the circumstances or things that like the commanders were doing, which kind of made it sound like, I know I'm like off on a limb here, but like she wasn't exactly chronicling what was happening.
I think she was chronicling what she thought she could use.
Okay, what does that mean? I was trying to read between the lines there, because it was clear she was trying to say something about like, I'm not just writing down their crimes, because that would be a problem. So what are we writing down?
Well, let's say your dad went to the grocery store today, right?
Okay.
Where
are we going with this?
You wouldn't write that down. But say your dad took $600,000 out of the bank today. That goes in the journal. That's weird.
Yeah, but she specifically said like it would be a problem to write down their crimes.
But it's hidden. And
I know, but why say that?
And it's even more brazen because she's using a pen. Remember I explained that pens are like this luxury because they can't really get pens. It's a very subtle thing, but since it's in pen, I'm like,
Okay.
She's very sure this is locked up tightly.
I'm going to have to, I'll probably watch that voiceover part over again, and maybe we'll bring that up at the beginning of our next episode, because I want to wrap my arms around what she was saying. Why would you say that? Why would you say it's dangerous for me to be writing down the crimes? We all know that. We all know that. So why say that? And what are you actually writing then? If you are implying you're not writing the crimes, what are you writing?
Okay. Here's some
you're going to throw some book on me. I can feel you booking at me.
It's probably different, but a fair amount of Lydia's POV sections were from this journal that she was keeping. Because remember I described in the previous podcast how the story is framed as a collection of memories and journals and findings and papers and things that are being presented in some future conference that is dedicated to studying Gilead and what went wrong and how
did it come to be?
How did it come to be and
Right.
all those things.
This is going back, you guys, back to the entire structure of Handmaids, like why the Handmaid story got out, why it's called Handmaid's Tale, like the whole thing.
Testaments is set up the same way. And so her segments are often listed as like journal entries, right?
Right.
They are a combination of remembrances of like the stuff in the stadium where she wants to outline that stuff to make sure it's preserved. But then also it was so interesting because it was a mixture of like her honest feelings about, say, like you said, about the comfort of fabric being not a major concern, and so all of the kind of the behavioral things that were still very ant-like still kind of made their way into the journal. But she also outlined kind of what she meant to do with this stuff. Not explicitly,
Okay.
but just that she had something in store. She needed to wait until all of her chess pieces were in the right spot before she started to do what she was going to do.
Okay. Well, that helps a lot, I think, in like adding some potential texture to what that journal scene was about. And like I said, I think I'm going to go back and watch just that last chunk again and try to figure out like what exactly were we supposed to be picking up, because what she was doing, what we thought she was doing, and the voiceover didn't necessarily match. To your example, she wasn't writing down, my dad went to the bank and took out 600. Like that's exactly what she said she wasn't writing down. So what was she writing down and how could she use it? And maybe could she write it in a way that was cryptic enough to get out of it if someone did find the journal? Like, is it possible?
You're right. Maybe it's not things like that. Maybe it is more like,
I don't know
this commander had this many appointments at Jezebel's, even though Jezebel's didn't exist. But, the sort of the dirt. Maybe she was writing the dirt.
Maybe, because she clearly said crimes. You would not write down the crimes because that's problematic. I don't know. I'm just curious. Again, you guys, we did not watch this over and over and over again. So I'm going to go back and watch that and we'll hit that in episode 7. I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. This world building is amazing and I'm so glad to get more of that transitional time. This is Caroline.
And this is Paul. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts. Or maybe you just click on the link in the Facebook post and listen to it on our website. If you do use one of those podcast channels, like I just mentioned, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a review. And if it's nice, we'll read it on the podcast. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening.
On Clubhouse.